What's up, Diablo fans? Today I'm showing you my Uber Lilith one-shot build. So let's get right into the kill first, and after that I will show you everything about the strategy, the skill build, etc. Enjoy!
I'm not ready yet.
Okay, so let's recap this fight. We want to start the fight with equipping our wand and focus, and as well we also equip our Fists of Fate, and with the crowd control lucky hit effects from our Fists of Fate as well as the convulsions passive, we want to stagger Uber Lilith as fast as possible in phase 1. Note that we are not using vulnerable right now. We don't want to damage it too fast, because as soon as it reaches the health percentage marked at the top, it's gonna start the first mechanic, and we don't want that to happen. We want to stagger it before the first mechanic hits. Okay, let's slow down here for a little bit. You can see her stagger bar is almost at 100%, and at this point we're going to switch to our 200 stuff and our real gloves here. Now we're going to start the first stagger phase. I will let it run in full speed, and after that I will show it again in slow motion and recap. We're gonna do like this. First Ice Blades, second jump on top of it, third Frost Nova, fourth nuke down. Note, my Frost Nova didn't come out here, but it was vulnerable from the Ice Blades. But you really want to do the Frost Nova here. Now it's going to transition into phase 2. You want to pick up all the health pots and all the crackling energy, and then move your ass slightly below the middle of this circle. Now we are switching back to wand and focus, put the Fists of Fate on, and as well we're gonna switch to Raiment of the Infinite now. Okay, let's slow down again. About 1 second before it spawns, we're going to cast Ice Blades. And we hold the shift key, and as soon as the health bar appears, we're gonna start using Chain Lightning. About another second later, we're going to cast a Frost Nova here. Then, as soon as the stagger bar is almost filled, we're going to use Flame Shield and then switch to our 200 stuff and gloves here. After switching, we immediately use Frost Nova to stagger it, use Unstable Currents and nuke it down. After about 4 seconds, we use our second Frost Nova so the vulnerable does not expire. And then we should have enough damage to just nuke it down. Unfortunately, it doesn't die, and we have to go through all the mechanics now, and all the following mechanics are pretty much just running around with the correct timings. For the first position, we start a little bit to the left of the middle of this top platform here and wait for Uber Lilith to appear again. Then we just run clockwise in a large circle and just dodge this pink whatever thingies here. For the second round, we start a little bit to the right of this circle here, and we are pretty much doing the same as last time. Continue to run circles and dodge these things. For the third platform, we are running a circle again and walk into the platform when Uber Lilith appears, and then towards the right we are gonna hit Flame Shield and walk out again. Make sure to not use your Flame Shield on the second platform. The third one is by far the most difficult, so if you wasted your Flame Shield on the second platform, you're going to have a hard time making the third one. Now you just have to take it out. There can be mechanics here, sometimes there are, sometimes they are not. I'm not sure what it's all about, but if you have mechanics, make sure to play them or use Flame Shield if you have it, and congratulations, you just did Uber Lilith. I just want to make some quick notes before you get into this build. This build is by far not the easiest build. It is really difficult to play. You need a lot of timings, you rely on in-battle gear switches, which sometimes just do not work. You need really good high DPS gear, and the stagger timings are a little bit random since they are based on lucky hit. So you will die in phase 1 a lot, and once you figured out how phase 1 works, you're probably going to get through phase 1 in about 66% of your tries, maybe a little bit more, but definitely not all. There's still gonna be random deaths or random fails in phase 1. Then phase 2 is technically pretty easy, but you're gonna screw it up. It's not as easy as it looks. It needs a lot of training, and you probably need to try for like 20-25 times, something like that. You will die. Of course, if you already know the timings and everything from other characters, you're gonna have an easier time doing this, but in general I would probably not recommend choosing this build just for it to be a one-shot build. Like, there's easier builds like Conjuration builds or Blizzard builds. They are just not like one-shot builds, but it actually doesn't matter. If you just want to beat Uber Lilith, you don't need to do a one-shot build. You can just regularly play the mechanics. It's not that hard actually. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and the explanation, so let's go into the skill build and everything else now. Going to the skill tree, as I already mentioned, this is pretty much the glass cannon build of all glass cannon builds. There's barely any defensives in here, so we just pick 2 points into Fireball to get access to core skills. Then we max out Chain Lightning with Enhanced Chain Lightning and Destructive Chain Lightning, pretty basic stuff. We max out Devastation and Elemental Dominance, and this is going to be active all the time. As for defensive, we just put 1 point into Flame Shield and 1 point into Enhanced Flame Shield. Enhanced Flame Shield is going to be very good with Asus boots, so it gives us additional critical strike chance. 1 point into Teleport. 1 point into Frost Nova with Enhanced Frost Nova and Mystical Frost Nova for the vulnerable. 3 points into Glass Cannon, 1 point into Elemental Attunement, pretty basic stuff. Then we have 1 point into Hydra, 1 point into Enhanced Hydra, and 1 point into Summoned Hydra. This is just to trigger Burning Synergy. We could use Fireball Enchantment, but Hydra gives us a little bit additional damage from Conjuration Mastery and also does a little bit more damage than the Firebolt Enchantment does. We put 1 point into Ice Blades. We pretty much just need this to give us a stack for the Caged Heart of Tal Rasha. 3 points into Precision Magic, 3 points into Conjuration Mastery, just 1 point into Align the Elements, no other defensive passives here. Then we put 1 point into Inner Flames, 3 points into Devouring Blaze, and it's very good if you have another 3 points into Devouring Blaze from your amulet. 2 points into Static Discharge. This is solely for the Crackling Energy damage. We don't do anything else with Crackling Energy here. 1 point into Permafrost, 3 points into Hoarfrost for the additional damage, because whenever Uber Lilith is staggered, she counts as frozen here. 1 point into unstable currents and 1 point into prime unstable currents just for the attack speed, 3 points into causing currents to max out the missing crit chance we have here, 3 points into conduction to synergize with Asus boots again, and 3 points into convulsions. We need this to get the stagger up and running. And our ultimate passive is going to be Asus, because we are going to be using the aspect as well to get a maximum of attack speed here. We use Unstable Currents as our ultimate. We needed to burst down Uber Lilith in phase 2. Then we use Frost Nova for the vulnerable application. We use Teleport just to get around real quicker and also to jump on top of Uber Lilith, because we need to be on top of her for the caged heart of the Omnipower and the mana regeneration to work perfectly. Flame Shield is pretty much required in this build, as pretty much in every Sorcerer build. Chain Lightning is our main damage skill, and Ice Blades we just use for the additional Tal Rasha stack actually. And Chain Lightning enchantment here, we have a mana pool of 222, so this actually fires 2 additional Chain Lightnings every Chain Lightning we shoot. And last but not least, the Hydra enchantment. You could use the Firebolt enchantment here, but the Hydra enchantment gives a stack to Conjuration Mastery and also does a little bit more damage than the Firebolt enchantment. Our legendary aspects are all pretty much focused around Chain Lightning. We used the aspect of Unbroken Tether on our two-handed weapon here. This gives us a maximum amount of Chain Lightning bounces. Then we used the aspect of Control on our amulet. This gives us the highest damage increase against staggered targets. Don't try to use like anything which involves like vulnerable. Like, I know it gives a little bit higher damage modificator, like you can get 60% to vulnerable enemies. The unfortunate thing about it is that you need to have a barrier up, and in this build you're not gonna have a barrier up. Period. There's no barrier, so you can't use these aspects. So aspect of Control is pretty much the only one you can use. Then we use the recharging aspect for Chain Lightning to regenerate the mana. You don't need a 3.0, you can also get like 2.5 or 2.0, that's going to work. Then we use the aspect of Ancient Flame to boost our Asus Ferocity. This is going to give us a tremendous amount of attack speed. Then we use the aspect of the Frostblitz, so this gives us an additional Frost Nova, and we need this since this is our only vulnerable applicator here, and it also does a lot of stagger, and we need it in certain situations. We pretty much have no choice to use anything else but this. Then we use the Exploiters aspect here. We don't really need any defensive aspect on this, and the crowd control duration helps a little bit with getting more stagger on the boss. Then on our gloves we use the Elementalist aspect. This boosts our critical strike chance to somewhere around 90%. On our pants we just use the Disobedience aspect. This is pretty much the only thing defensive we are doing here. And then we have our alternative slot here. We have the one-handed weapon, which we also use the Unbroken Tether on, just to give again Chain Lightning bounces after we weapon swap. And then on our focus we just want to get the accelerating aspect to get more attack speed, since the only purpose of our weapon swap is to get stagger up faster, and attack speed actually helps the most here. For the stat priorities, we want to get as high offensive stats as we can possibly get. Let's start with our two-handed stuff. So our two-handed stuff ideally has to have vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, lightning critical strike damage, and intelligence. I have core skill damage, which is much weaker than lightning critical strike damage, but I guess this is still a pretty good piece. Then on our amulet, we want to have movement speed, intelligence, ranks of Devouring Blaze, and ideally we want another damage stat here. I have damage reduction from distance, which pretty much helps nothing at all at Uber Lilith, so you can imagine that you can get a damage stat on here. Then for our rings, we want to have vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, lightning critical strike damage, and critical strike chance. So this one is pretty much the perfect piece you can get. The second one I have here is not as perfect, but still it's pretty good, I guess. Then on our helmet, we want to have a maximum mana roll as high as possible because we need a big mana pool for the Omnipower. Then we can have ranks of Hydra, and we can have all stats, we can have main stat. It's pretty much not so important. You can also get crowd control duration here to help with the stagger. On our primary armor, we pretty much just want as much damage reduction as possible. We are just going to be wearing this in phase 1, and Uber Lilith in phase 1 actually does decent damage, so it really helps a lot to get a lot of damage reduction on here. This again has damage reduction from distance, which doesn't help against Uber Lilith at all, so you could just supplement this with a different stat here. Then on our gloves, we want to have critical strike chance, attack speed, main stat, and chain lightning rank. This is also pretty much the perfect piece for this build. Then on our pants, we just want damage reduction again. Also here, I'm using one with damage reduction from distant because I don't have any. Again, this doesn't help, so you can supplement this with another stat here. On our Asus boots, we just care about two stats. We care about maximum movement speed and the percentage of the unique passive, so 28% is pretty good actually. And then on our gear, which we supplement, we want to have a wand with main stat. Actually, the stats on here do not really matter at all because all we need this for is to do the stagger. For the focus, we want to have as much lucky hit as possible, and the lucky hit to slow actually helps staggering, but it's not mandatory. So just make sure you have a lot of lucky hit on here. Then our primary applicator for stagger is Fists of Fate. Unfortunately, my Fists of Fate are completely terrible, so I have the lowest immobilize roll and I have a very low daze roll. If you have higher immobilize and daze rolls, you might actually not even need to switch to one hand and focus here because Fists of Fate actually gives an amazing amount of stagger. And lastly, we going to have the Raiment of the Infinite. This is just giving us a lot of damage in phase 2, and you don't really care about any of these stats here, just about the damage stats. You don't care about the stun duration. The damage stats are what is important here. For the Caged Hearts, we use the Caged Heart of the Omnipower, and you really want to have a low roll here. I have a 36 one. You can probably do this with up to a 38 one, but I wouldn't try with anything like 40 or above, really. It's not going to be very delightful. Then for our second heart, we use the Caged Heart of Tal Rasha. This gives us a 36% flat damage increase. You want to have as high as possible roll in percentage here. The seconds do not matter at all, so try to get as close to 12% as possible. Our third Caged Heart is going to be the Caged Heart of Tempting Fate. This gives us up to 85% additional critical strike damage. The non-critical strike in this build do not really matter at all, since we have a very, very high critical strike chance in this build. I'm actually reaching a 96% critical strike chance when I have Flame Shield off, and when I have Flame Shield on, I'm above 100%. So this is pretty much as high as it can get. This Paragon board is pretty much the most advanced single target Paragon board I ever made. This literally has damage and only damage. It really has nothing else. I stripped almost every single unrequired non-damage node out of here. So let's get into it. We use the Elementalist glyph here, and just keep in mind, for the glyphs, the most important thing here is the additional bonuses, because these usually give multiplicative damage increase. This one here, for example, gives a 15% for fire, cold, and lightning damage. So this is pretty much what we are looking for in this Paragon board here. Moving over to the next board, this is going to be the Burning Instinct board, and we pick all the damage nodes here, and then we pick the Destruction Glyph for a maximum amount of critical strike damage, and we also pick the damage to burning and elite nodes here in the middle. Then moving over to the next board, that is going to be the Elemental Summoner board. We need this to just pick up the maximum mana here for the Omnipower build, and we pick up all the attack speed nodes here. Let's move over to the next board, that is the Frigid Fate board. In the Frigid Fate board, we use the Tactician Glyph here for the 10% increased damage after using a defensive skill. We pretty much use defensive skills all the time. And then we just pick up all the vulnerable damage here. That's pretty basic stuff, as in pretty much every other Sorcerer build. Moving over to the next board, and this is going to be the Static Surge board. Again, we pick up all the mana nodes here and damage to stunned nodes. Remember, whenever Uber Lilith is staggered, she counts as stunned. So we have all the nice damage to stunned here. And we put in the Flame Feeder glyphs with 44 dexterity, which gives us an additional 10% increased damage to burning targets. Let's move over to the Keyless Conduit board. We use this to just pick up the glyph socket here, and we put the Exploit glyph in for a maximum amount of vulnerable damage here, and also the static damage increase. These crackling energy nodes here do not really matter at all. And let's move over to the last board, that is the Searing Heat board. We use this to put in our control glyph for another 20% damage increase to frozen enemies and stunned enemies, and we just pick up the critical strike damage here in the middle. Let's talk about elixirs here real quick. So the very best elixir you can get here is the elixir of resourcefulness. The 50 additional mana helps a lot. It gives you additional chain lightnings, it gives you additional chain lightnings from the chain lightning enchant. It is by far the best elixir you can run here. Trust me, I tested them all, nothing comes even close to this one here. Unfortunately, you cannot craft this, so you probably don't want to burn through your entire stack of elixirs while you are training. So if you're training, if you're not close to the kill, then you should use the Heady Assault elixir. This comes pretty close to the resourcefulness one, but it is not there. You will probably not make it by using the Heady Assault elixir, but you can try. So if you can get to the second phase consistently and you have everything trained, then you can start using the elixir of resourcefulness until you are like really confident that you can actually beat it. I would probably use the Heady Assault elixir here. And that's it for this guide. I hope you enjoy it, and remember, you can find all the links in the description down below. Also at the very end of the description you find links to all my other build guides. Also currently I'm working on a very detailed level 1 to 100 leveling guide for season 2, and it's gonna take some time until that is out, but it's going to show you all the skills I'm going to use. It's going to show you when to change the skill tree, when to change Paragon, on which level to get the aspects from dungeons you need, and everything. So that's really an everything you need to know leveling guide, which is going to get you from level 1 to 100 as smooth as possible when the new season hits. So I guess I see you then, and thank you very much for watching.